Okay, so I was asked a question about how to put a material on the outside of an object and what kind of objects. Essentially what the question was, I want to put a brick on the outside of my building. How do I do that? So the two objects that we can put what are called materials on are going to be a basic or a mesh. And if I select that and if I come over here, I will see that the object is a static mesh component, and that lets me know that this is a static mesh. The other thing that will also let me know that it's a static mesh is the fact that if I look over in the details panel, it says static mesh, and there is an object placeholder for static mesh, and if I look at the object itself, it has a blue coloring on the bottom of it. What I've done down here is I have actually turned all my basic asset filters on, and I'm now looking down the row and I am seeing that each one of these has a unique color. So static meshes are blue, materials are green, particle systems, which we'll talk about later when we do like fire or something like that, are white, and levels are orange, and you kind of get the point, right? So everything here, the things that you can put on the outside of an object are going to be either a material or a texture. It depends on the object, and it depends on how you're applying that and whether you're going into the material itself. But generally speaking, you're going to be putting a material on the outside of these two things. Now, if I've got a basic object like this, like the square, and I'm looking to, let's say, put a brick outside to it, right now it's looking through everything and it's looking through those folders. So I'm going to put there, and I'm going to specifically look for just a material. So I'm going to actually turn off everything else. Okay, so now I have brick, and they are materials, and I know that they are materials because they are green. You'll see over here where I do have a materials folder, and if I grab this and drag it over into the material, I now have that. It is a little bit more difficult to go through and change the material type and the way that it appears here on a mesh. This is sort of like dealing with like a bitmap image where, like, if you start to try to stretch this or you stretch it in one direction, for example, if I select the object and stretch it in one direction, you'll see that it doesn't tile, it just stretches it. Now if I stretch it evenly, meaning that I stretch all three axes at the same time, the thing will scale up with it, but it won't allow you to be able to change the scaling, at least not easily, at least not from here. Okay. The other thing that you have that you can also add, let's say, a material to would be a geometry. Now you'll notice that when I select a geometry, the geometry actually allows me to select what face I want something to show up on. So I can now grab this, put it over to a face, and you will see that it is now tiled in like brick as opposed to what it did over here, which it tiled in way too large. Right? Now, the nice thing about a geometry is that if I need a different material on the other side, I can do that. So now I have a brick that has both one type of brick on one side, one type of brick on the other. And if I select the object and now scroll up, you'll see that underneath surfaces, when I select a surface, it tells me that I have different objects in each one of those. Now, the other nice thing about a geometry is that if I scale this up, that also scales with it. And if I want to select the object, I also can come here into surface properties, and I can now start changing the UV settings for this. And you can see now that I get a smaller brick or I get a larger brick. So I have way more control of a material on a geometry than I do on a mesh. Now the other thing that may also be happening is that you are trying to bring in, let's say, a mesh that already has some type of brick exterior to the outside of it. That might be some type of wall. I'm trying to see here if I can't find something. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. Now, the material that is on the outside of this has actually been created for these blocks. Um, so if I was to try to now go through and add, let's say, a different type of material to this, it's not going to layer on it really well. So I'm going to go back to brick, go back to materials, turn static off so I only have the brick materials, change the brick. And you can see that there's breaks in the pattern. I mean, I guess, you can, but at the same time, you now have lost a lot of control over. There is no surface material for this, so you're sort of stuck at what they're giving you, at least from the details panel level. So for me, if I was going to be doing something, I would prefer to either use the material that already came with it, right? Because that will scale up and looks nice with the material or with the mesh that you're using. And then the other thing would be to use the geometry whenever possible, because you have way more control because you have surface properties there, and you can change the surface properties quite easily to change what is on the outside or on the inside of the brick. Okay, so I hope that helps. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.